Hello, learners. Welcome to our session for today. I am Miss Arban, and together, let's learn science. In this video, we will be talking about the coordination of nervous system and endocrine system to achieve homeostasis. Before we start, let me share to you the content standard and performance standard of Science 10 Quarter 3. Content standard, the learners demonstrate an understanding of organisms as having feedback mechanisms which are coordinated by the nervous and endocrine systems. For the performance standard, the learners shall be able to create a brochure on diseases related to any of the three organ systems and their prevention. The objectives of our lesson are the following. First, define homeostasis. Second, state how feedback mechanism is related with the nervous system to achieve homeostasis. Then the third one, value the significance of why homeostasis is needed by our body to function well. The outline of the session are the following. First part, we will be having an activity entitled Where Am I? So it is a word hunt game. Next part, lesson proper of the nervous system and endocrine system, also the homeostasis, and then the last part will be the explanation of your learning task. Now let's proceed to our first activity, Where Am I? So as you can see here, we have a word search puzzle. All you have to do is to search for those words that are related with nervous system, endocrine system, and homeostasis. You will be given 100 seconds to find those words, and please type your answers on the comment section, or you may write it down on your paper. So let's start the activity. Your time starts now. Okay, so your time is up. Now let's reveal those words. So we have nervous system, balance, hormones. Ayan. So baliktad siya. Also, ang brain. We have homeostasis. We have neurons, impulse, gland, and signal. So we have 9 words all in all. So we have the impulse, nervous system, signal, hormones, balance, homeostasis, brain, neurons, and glands. So we will be encountering all those words as we go along. Now let's start the discussion about nervous system. Our nervous system is responsible for the transfer of electrochemical signals all throughout the body to react or respond to stimuli that are in the environment. Okay, now the nervous system is divided into two major divisions, which are the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. So the central nervous system consists of the brain and spinal cord, and the peripheral nervous system consists of all the nerves that are connected to the different parts of the body. Now, we have here the brain, the parts of the brain. Now, what is the main function of the brain? So, the brain is an organ located within the skull that functions as organizer and distributor of information for the body. So, kumbaga sa computer, it is the CPU or the control processing unit of the nervous system. So this is the different parts of the brain, and as you can see, each part has its specific function. Now the main parts of the brain are the cerebrum, the cerebellum, and then the brainstem. So as we can see, the cerebrum is the largest part of the brain, and this is responsible for the activity and thought of our body. And it is divided into four lobes. We have frontal lobe, temporal lobe, occipital, and parietal lobe. Now, frontal lobe is responsible for judgment, foresight, and voluntary movement. It is also responsible for the smell. Okay, and then under the frontal lobe, we have the Broca's area, which is responsible for our speech. Now, the temporal lobe, nasa gilid siya ng ating ulo, we have the intellectual and emotional functions. It is also responsible for hearing. Okay, so may specific part dyan of the brain of the lobe that is responsible for a specific function. And then we have parietal lobe, which is responsible for comprehension of language. So, nandito siya sa may taas, sa likod ng ating ulo. Then we have occipital, which is responsible for primary visual area. Nandito siya sa may taas ng batok. Okay. We have also Wernicke's area sa temporal lobe, which is responsible for speech comprehension. And then we have the motor cortex here sa taas, which is responsible for movement, and then sensory cortex for pain, heat, and other sensations. So related to sa ating sense organs. Okay, now let's proceed to the cerebellum. Ayan, nandito siya sa ilalim ng cerebrum. Now, the cerebellum is responsible for coordination, posture, and balance of our body. Yan, kumbaga kung bakit tayo nakakagalaw. Okay? And then, brainstem is for the passageway of the signal from the spinal cord to the brain and vice versa. Signal from the brain to the spinal cord and then to the rest of the body. It is also responsible for automatic functions such as swallowing, breathing, heartbeat, wakefulness center, and other involuntary functions. Okay, now let's go back here to the diagram. The spinal cord, on the other hand, so ito po yun, nasa likod, it is protected by the spinal column or the vertebrae. Ayan. It is the channel of the signal from the different parts of the body to the brain and from the brain to the different parts of the body. Sometimes It has or it controls musculoskeletal reflexes, and it sends signals even if it is not from the brain. Now let's proceed here to the peripheral nervous system, the other division of the nervous system. Now this is responsible for the connection of the other parts of the body to the central nervous system. So this consists of the nerves, ayan, which are connected to the glands and to the different organs. Now, the peripheral nervous system is subdivided into subdivisions: autonomic nervous system and somatic nervous system. Now, the somatic nervous system, it is responsible for voluntary movement, and it communicates with sense organs. It is subdivided also into two parts. We have the sensory nervous system and then the motor nervous system. Now, the sensory nervous system is responsible for the acquisition or for the reception of stimuli from the environment. So, this is afferent. Okay, so ito yung matanggap ng signal from the environment. And sensory input through our senses. And then the motor nervous system, on the other hand, does the opposite. Okay, so this is for efferent or effect or response of our body to the certain stimuli na na-receive ng ating sensory nervous system dito. Okay, now let's proceed to the other division of the peripheral nervous system, which is the autonomic nervous system. Now, the autonomic nervous system is responsible for involuntary movement and communicates with internal organs and glands. So, meron din siyang two parts. We have the sympathetic division and then the parasympathetic division. Now, ang sympathetic division is for arousing or for active movements or active part. And then the parasympathetic is for calming or yung kalmado, balanse lang. Ayan. So this is a picture to differentiate the two. Okay. Parasympathetic, constrict pupils. On the other hand, sympathetic naman is dilate pupils. Kumbaga pag dilate, mas malaki ang pupil natin dyan. Okay, then dito naman ay constrict. So, calm lang yung pupil natin dyan. And then, parasympathetic stimulates saliva. And then, dito naman sa kabila, it inhibit salivation. Then, on the other hand, as you can see, we have here in sympathetic nerves, we have the relaxed airways, increase heartbeat, inhibit activity of stomach. Ayan. So, yung nandito sa sympathetic ay kabaligtaran or opposite ng dito sa parasympathetic. Okay? And then, again, when we say sympathetic, ito yung active part. And then, dito sa parasympathetic, ito yung chill part lang or calm part. And then, dito sa gitna, we can see the brain and then the spinal cord. Now, the spinal cord has different partitions rin. Ayan. Kung mapapansin nyo kung nasaan dyan ang connected sa different glands and organs. So, we have the cervical nerves, the cranial nerves, then cervical, thoracic, lumbar, sacral, and then coccygeal nerves. So, if ever na mayroon dyan na isang part na nagkaroon ng problema, ayan, merong organ or gland na maaapektuhan. Okay? Now let's proceed to neurons or nerve cells. Now these are the basic functional unit of the nervous system. So ito yung bumubuo sa ating nervous system. Now it has three types, we have sensory, motor, and interneuron. Now, their names resembles their functions. Now, the sensory neuron is responsible for the reception, or it receives a stimulus or information from our sense organs. And then the motor neuron, the ones that control our voluntary functions like our movement. And then the interneuron, they connect spinal, motor, and sensory neurons. Now, as you can see here, they differ also on their structure. The sensory neuron looks like this. Ayan. Then, interneuron. And then we have here the motor neuron. Now, a neuron, okay, explain natin ang parts. A neuron has dendrites, cell body, and axon. So those are the three main parts of the neurons. The dendrites receives the signal from other neurons. And then it will transfer it to the cell body. Okay, the cell body has a mitochondria and the nucleus here. And then it will, or the message will be passed through the axon and then the nerve endings sa dulo. And it will be received by the other dendrites of the other neuron. Now, in the end part, okay, hindi sila talaga magkakadikit, yung ating neurons. Meron niyang small space called synapse. Doon, yung space na yun nagkakaroon ng passing of the electrochemical signals na tinatawag na nerve impulse. Ayan. Doon sa dulo, doon sa nerve endings, yung particular neuron natin, mag-release yun ng neurotransmitter. Okay? And then yung neurotransmitter, that will be the way para maipasa yung message na dumaan dito sa sensory neuron. Okay, and then it will be passed through the neurons, millions of neurons hanggang sa makapunta siya kay brain. Okay, and then ipaprocess ni brain yung information. For example, nagluluto ka, then bigla kang napasok. So, sensory neuron, yung balat, ayan, magpapasa sila ng information kay brain na napasok yung balat mo. And then, si brain naman, pag napunta na yung message kay brain, ipaprocess ni brain yung information, and then maglalabas siya ng signal or information kung ano ang magiging response ng katawan. At yun naman ang ipapasa ng ating interneuron kay motor neuron for the response. Okay, so as you can see, magkakaiba nga sila ng itsura. Ayan, so dendrites, the information will be received by the dendrites. Then it will pass through the cell body. It will pass through the axon. Ayan, and then dito na sa pinakadulo, sa nerve endings or sa axon terminal. Ayan, nerve endings nandun yun sa ating mga senses. I have lots of nerve endings. Okay, and then afterwards, gagawin na ng body natin yung information na nanggaling kay brain. So through these neurons or nerve cells, the nervous system or our nervous system can do its function of transferring electrical signals in and out of the brain to response for certain stimulus. Okay, now this function is essential because if our body will not be able to react, it can cause fatalities. Okay, so yung mga namamanhid or hindi makakita, hindi makarinig, hindi makalasa, ayan. So those are, or this organ system is very, very important for it is responsible for transferring signals. Okay, and remember, those signals are passed through these neurons. Kaya importante na healthy ang ating neurons or ang ating nerve cells. Okay? Now let's proceed to another communication system of our body, which is the endocrine system. Okay, now the endocrine system is another communication channel of our body. Now, unlike the nervous system, the endocrine system is a ductless system, meaning wala silang common na network where the parts are connected with each other. Okay, so the endocrine system is consisting of glands which releases hormones. Hormones are chemicals that pass through our bloodstream to deliver signals on a specific organ or target organ. Okay, so let's enumerate some glands in our body. We have the hypothalamus. It is located on the brain. It has or it releases hormones such as antidiuretic hormone. Ang target organ niya is kidney and its function is to regulate water reabsorption of the cells. Another is oxytocin. Target organ is uterus. It is for the contraction of uterus in giving birth naman. Also, it is called as the love hormone, the oxytocin. Okay, then we have the pituitary gland. The pituitary gland is the master gland or major gland dito sa atin sa endocrine system. It is also located inside the brain. Hormones produced are growth hormone. Ang target organ is all cells responsible for growth and of cells and tissues. Okay, so ito yung isa sa dahilan bakit yung iba ay sobrang tangkad and yung iba naman ay sobrang liit. And then we have thyroid stimulating hormone. The thyroid gland stimulates thyroid gland to secrete T4 and calcitonin. Then adrenocorticotropic hormone for adrenal cortex stimulate adrenal cortex to secrete glucocorticoids. And then follicle stimulating hormone, target organ niya is testes and ovaries, same with the luteinizing hormone. And then it's, or both of them, stimulates gonads to produce sex cells and sex hormones. Now let's proceed to the thyroid gland, located trachea. Ayan. So, it produces thyroxine and calcitonin. So, sa thyroxine, ang target organ niya is all cells and then responsible for growth and metabolism. Calcitonin naman, ang target organ is bones and then it responsible for reduced blood calcium level. Okay? Now, kay parathyroid, so nasa likod lang siya ng thyroid. Ayan. So, ang hormone produced is parathyroid hormone. Ang target organ ay bones. And then, increase blood calcium level ang kanyang function. So, ito ay kabaligtaran nung kay calcitonin. Okay? And also, as you are familiar with goiter, once na natanggal ang thyroid, tanggal din doon ang parathyroid. Kaya ang maintenance na iniinom ng mga naoperahan na dito ay for calcium. Okay, and then we have the thymus located at the back of sternum. Ang hormone na napoproduce niya is thymosin. Target organ is all cells and it stimulates production of T cells for immunity. So for immunity naman to para hindi nagkakasakit. Now, let's proceed with the adrenal gland which are on top of kidneys. So we have two adrenal glands. Yan. Hormone produced is glucocorticoid epinephrine and non-epinephrine. So ang target organ, all cells, heart, bones, muscles, for inflammation and immune system, also for flight and fight response during stress. So ito yung nagiging active whenever we are experiencing um, stressful events. Okay, like for example, nasunugan ka, then kailangan mong hakutin lahat ng gamit mo palabas. So, ito yung nagiging pinaka-active na nagbubuhat mo yung mga mabibigat na bagay na kapag normal naman ang sitwasyon ay hindi mo mabubuhat. Something like that. Or kapag um, or nakakita ka ng aso or hinahabol ka ng aso, napapabilis yung takbo mo pero yung normal na takbo mo naman ay hindi ganun kabilis. Something like that. Okay? Then we have the pancreas. Located below the stomach, it produces insulin and glucagon. Okay, ang target organ is liver and muscles. Now, insulin lowers blood sugar level, and then glucagon raises blood sugar level. Okay, so ang glucagon, mas naging active siya kapag nagugutom ang tao. Okay, and then yung sa insulin, lowers blood sugar level kapag masyado naman na sobra yung nai-intake natin. But if mawala sa balanse, okay, masisira yung ating production of insulin. Saka tayo nagkakaroon ng diabetes. Okay, so dapat balanse lang lagi. Then we have the testes and ovaries or the gonads located at the pelvic region. Ang testes produces testosterone and androgen, ovaries naman produces progesterone and estrogen. So, ang target organ, ayan, so sa sex organs, responsible for male secondary characteristics and also for female secondary sex characteristics. Okay, now, these organs or some of these glands, okay, you may browse one of my compositions sa endocrine system song para mas matandaan natin yung functions and hormones produced by some of the glands here. The link will be provided in the description of this video, so you may browse it later. Ayan. Now let's proceed to homeostasis. Now we are done discussing the two communication channels or two organ system which are responsible for communication dito sa ating katawan. Now ano ba ang homeostasis? Now homeostasis is the maintenance of internal balance in an organism despite changes in the environment. So balance, internal balance ng organism despite of changes in the environment. So, yun yung mga stimuli. Now, this is the parts of the feedback loop in our homeostasis. So, the first one is a stimulus. It is anything or something that disrupts the body's homeostasis. So, na-discuss na rin natin ito kanina. It is from our environment na marireceive ng ating katawan through sensor. So, sensor detects the change in homeostasis. So, we have our internal balance inside our body and then the sensor will detect kung merong pagbabago or imbalance sa ating katawan with the appearance of the stimulus or stimuli. Then, after na ma-detect natin yung change na yon in homeostasis, the message will be sent to the control center. So it is the part of the body that responds to the change and acts kung ano man ang dapat na maging response doon. So it is the pituitary gland in the brain or the brain itself. And then afterwards, after ma-process na yung information na na-detect ng sensor, the information naman for the response will be passed through the effector or any organ or cell that ultimately responds to the stimulus. And then we have the response or a response from the effector balances out the original stimulus to maintain homeostasis. Now, na-receive na ni effector yung information ng reaction or response, then i-execute naman na yun to balance our body in order to maintain the homeostasis. Now, in our previous discussions, we had encountered feedback mechanism, which is a process by which the level of one substance influences the level of another substance. Now, here in our homeostasis, it can be substance or action depending on the stimulus present. Now, we have here positive feedback, which is a control system that causes the end products of an action to produce more of that action to occur in the feedback loop. Meaning, yung action na to or yung substance na to will be produced more. Kumbaga, nagpo-promote siya ng production. Ayan. Nagpo-promote siya ng production of action or substance based on the stimulus present. As you can see here, stimulus will be received or perceived by the sensor's receptor, and then yung signal, it will be passed through the regulatory center or the brain, pituitary gland, and then magpa-process ng gagawin with respect to that stimulus. Okay, and then the signal or the response will be sent to the effector or any part of the body that will act with respect to this stimulus. Okay, and then saka magpo-produce ng response. On the other hand, we have the negative feedback naman, which is a control system that reduces or even stops the body from producing change when favorable or stable conditions are met. So, kinakancel out niya yung um, action or yung production of substance. Okay, so again, it depends upon the body or it depends upon our body. Okay, when we are attaining that balance, maka-cancel out na yung um, change na yun. Yung production of change or production of substance or action. Okay, now let's discuss some example. So, thermoregulation. When we say thermoregulation, it is the internal body temperature. So, approximately, ang ating internal body temperature is 36 to 38 degrees Celsius. Now, we have two conditions. One is if the temperature rises above normal, and then if the temperature falls below normal. So, let's discuss first this one kapag tumaas ang temperature. So, again, thermoregulation center in the brain is activated. And then dahil dyan, na-activate, sasabihin ng brain mainit. So, pituitary gland, mag-send ka ng message kay sweat glands para mag-release ng pawis or sweat. Ayan. Sweat glands secrete sweat that evaporates, cooling the body. So, wag tayong mainis kapag pinapawisan kasi nire-regulate lang nun yung ating internal body temperature. And then blood vessels in skin dilates and heat escapes. Kaya namumula kapag mainit. Now, what if the temperature falls below normal? Ayan, so sasabihin ni brain malamig. Ayan po. And then magre-release ng message papunta sa skeletal muscle para mag-contract. Causes shivering which generates heat. So, panginginig. Nanginginig tayo kapag malamig para mag-release tayo ng heat. Okay, and then the blood vessels in skin constrict, minimizing heat loss. Kaya tayo nagkakaroon din ng or tumatayo din ng balahibo, goosebumps, to maintain the internal body temperature. Next, we have blood glucose regulation or sa ating blood sugar level. Again, um, may dalawang side kapag mataas or mababa ang blood sugar. Okay? So, by the way, again, dito sa thermoregulation, ang stimulus natin yung init. Okay? Or lamig. And then, We have here naman sa blood glucose regulation, if tumaas, it is because kumain tayo. So, ang stimulus natin ay yung pagkain or yung kinain natin. Okay? And then if ang blood glucose natin ay tumaas, so madedetect yan ni pituitary gland as the master gland, and then si pituitary gland, magsisend siya ng signal dito kay pancreas na mag-release ng insulin para bumaba ang ating sugar level. Okay, then si pancreas naman, yung insulin, papasa siya ng message kay liver, take ni liver yung glucose and i-store niya yun as glycogen, yung sobrang glucose. Okay, and then body cells take up more glucose, yung dapat lang na makuhang glucose, para ma-maintain yung ating 90 milligrams of glucose per 100 ml of blood. Okay. Paano naman kapag bumaba ang glucose level natin? Ganun pa rin. Si pituitary gland magre-release ng message kay pancreas para mag-release siya ng glucagon hormone. Okay? Then again, ang glucagon hormone is responsible for the increase in blood sugar level. Okay? And then that hormone, punta siya kay adipose cells para mag-breakdown ng glucose, breakdown into fat. Okay. And then, magbe-breakdown na itong ating glycogen into glucose, yung na-store natin before. Okay. Ayan. So, for homeostasis, for maintaining the balance of our body. So, remember, homeostasis is the internal balance of our body. Dapat hindi masisira yung homeostasis na yun because whenever that homeostasis is not achieved, may mangyayari sa katawan like magkakasakit or pinaka-worst will be death or fatalities. Now, let's proceed to the learning task. I-explain ko lang po sa inyo kung ano yung mga gagawin ninyo for this week. So, the first one is graphic organizer. So, we have here blood glucose regulation. Ilalagay nyo lang yung tamang words or tamang word in specific shapes here. And then, dito kayo pipili. Ayan. So, alin ba dyan yung stimulus, alin dyan yung sensor, and then receptor, and then response. Kumbaga, ito yung ating feedback loop dito sa ating particular scenario, which is blood glucose regulation. Okay? And then, learning task number 2, you will be having an essay. So, you will reflect, do you know what a thermostat is for? So, sasagutan nyo po ito, babasahin nyo din sagutan. You may have your research here. And then, learning task 3 is you will be having an activity, performance task. Pipili lang kayo ng isa na disease and then you will have to make one media presentation, poster or brochure for awareness. Ayan. So, nandun din kung ano yung disease na yun, ano yung sanhi or cause, and then symptoms, treatment, and suggested lifestyle. Okay, so if you have questions, you may contact me with this email or on this email and or have your direct message sa ating messenger. So thank you for listening and see you on our next lesson.